Andy's over there just like moving my faders up and down.
Yeah, well, you know, that's like just your opinion, man.
All right, hello and welcome to the Audio Opinion Show, where people who do audio have opinions about stuff. That's pretty much the whole show. That's our shtick. That's what we do. There's nothing else to it. If you were looking for something more complicated, it's not more complicated than that. I'm joined by what turns out to be some of my really good friends. These are all folks that come out and do this on a regular basis. So hi to all of my new and old friends. And we haven't decided which Andrew is Andrew and which Andrew is Andy. So I'm just gonna say randomly Andrew and Andy, and then whoever speaks up first wins. That's the way we're gonna do this. Okay, so just because I can, I am. Wait. Oh, okay, that's fine. I guess it just didn't. Oh, this is bad. I wonder if I didn't.
I'm seeing us live on YouTube, if that's what you're wondering.
Yeah. No, it's a polling thing. I was just like, okay, so just because I can, I'm skipping the Princess Bride question because we talked about Princess Bride already in the pre-show. Look at the shock. Wait. Okay, so wait. I'll do a thing. We're out of control. So if you can see it, here's my Princess Bride reference. And that is the movie poster, except the two people in it is my wife and I. Is that not the most adorable thing? Are we not adorable?
February.
Did you wear those costumes when you got married?
You're too late. February.
Here we are. We're supposed to be all these crusty road guys, and you just melted us, Brian. Oh.
I mean, basically, it just means my wife is super good at Photoshop. That's what that means. But
my mouse pad has my wedding on it.
Oh, see, there you go. So, okay, so it's sharing our own Princess Bride moments. So that's the assignment for the next time we do the show, is that you have to share your own personal princess bride of your life, even if it's your dog.
As you wish.
I was just thinking about this before the show, but Robin Wright, who played Buttercup, right?
Yes.
She went on to become Mrs. Kevin Spacey in House of Cards, correct? Yeah. Okay.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Sure.
And married to Sean
She
Penn
was
at one time.
Jenny.
Sean State Penn. That's Sean Penn. Okay.
Robin Wright was in that movie where
Forrest
making a
Gump.
joke about herself too. She was a robot or something. In a movie.
We have completely lost control of the show. This is what lost control looks like. All right, let's launch our poll. Let's figure out what we're going to talk about. I don't know if this is what I was going to do, but let's just launch it and see. So, our topic. Our first topic, I'm going to read it off to the people on YouTube because they can't see the poll. And it's topic number 1, AES50 versus MADI versus Dante versus AVB versus Twinland versus whatever else you want to do. Let's talk about audio networking and what's going on in that world now and what used to be and all that kind of stuff. Subwoofers. Do we like end fire arrays, other subwoofer arrays, no arrays? Third topic, what's your favorite mixing console? And I intentionally left that broad. Number 4, what's your favorite audio trick? 5, wireless versus wired, actual pros and cons. And 6, point source versus line array, which nobody seems to pick because it's such a gimme. So
you can't do wireless without Carl.
Exactly. Like we pretty much, that's a rule. That is kind of a rule. I mean, there's
got to
nobody
get Henry too.
There's nobody else on this panel that knows anything about wireless. So, if Carl's not here, like, what's the point? All right, I'll end the poll because I can't vote. And we are going to talk about what is literally the most interesting thing on the planet, which is digital audio. What kind of digital audio are we going to use and what do we like? Actually, I cannot tell a lie. Andy and I were talking about this a little earlier. You can decide which Andy it is as I continue the story, because it has been interesting. There have been a lot of changes more recently in the just I'll be the one that introduces the topic because we were talking about it in digital audio protocols because a lot of the we went through a whole thing and some of us have been around for a while kind of remember all of the ether sound and the Cobra nets and all the just the stuff that we went through and we kind of arrived at Dante as a really great generic solution and it's gotten very wide acceptance, but now Yamaha in their newest consoles is moving towards TwinLAN, I think is their main
Twin
thing.
lane with an
TwinLAN E, and TwinLAN, and some of the manufacturers are talking about using AVB rather than Dante as their primary protocol of choice. Dante is obviously still kind of everywhere. MADI is still king in TV land, and the music group, love them or hate them, is still firmly in the AES50 camp, and they probably sell more gear than everybody else combined. So, anybody got any ideas of where we might be going? Andy, there can only be one Lipnick. That's a way to get called out, my friend.
I had to make a distinction somehow. I'm sorry, my brain shut off while you were talking about Yamaha and their latest console and then everything after that because I was writing a chat. I'm so sorry.
It's quite all right. Anybody else want to jump in?
Sure.
Go, Andy. That's the second one.
Well, more about what we were kind of talking about before was, interestingly, everybody loves Dante because it's so networkable and you can, route things in different ways and send stuff from one place to a whole bunch of other places. And interestingly, people are going back to things like AES50 and other non-networkable systems. TwinLAN is non-networkable, other stuff like this, and they're going away from this networking thing. Now, we don't really know for sure whether the manufacturers have changed their minds about this, but there's some talk about Dante's not as good as we think it is. Like AVB is being used by L-Acoustics. Now they could use whatever they want, but they feel that Dante's not up to the quality level that they want, so they're using AVB. Same with Avid, they've gone to AVB. Yamaha's given up on Dante and gone to this TwinLAN system, which you can't even put into a network switch anymore. And their console control system is layer 2. It's not networkable either. So it's kind of funny that we thought, well, this networkable stuff is going to be way better to be used, but everybody's going away from that now. So I don't know. MADI's not really networkable either, is it?
No.
So,
No.
That's
It's kind of interesting
that.
too. If you're old enough to remember VHS versus Beta. Beta was the superior system as far as specifications, but VHS was quickly more common and the equipment was easier to use.
And licensing was cheaper.
Well, yeah, I was
And
gonna
the
say
licensing
licensing was the
it's
licensing was the big
possible
thing.
that now we're seeing something similar with why Dante exploded, but because we're an industry that is more concerned about the actual specifications, everybody's stepping back and taking another look at it.
Well, and Dante, Dante is great for the same reason that it's not great, which is that you can use off-the-shelf networking gear. So you can use a network that was never designed to run audio on it, and you can run audio on it. Well, that's inherently, you're begging to have issues because you are using, there's compromises. Like, networks, regular data networks are designed to, we'll move traffic fast, but if we have to, hold some stuff up for a split second and move some other stuff and then, let it go later, like, it'll be fine. Like, nobody will notice. Like, who's going to care? Their page loads 3 microseconds slower. But now all of a sudden we're putting, sample accurate, has to be precisely on time data down this tunnel. And I'm a huge Dante fan. I use it constantly. My whole entire space in here is all Dante. It's an incredible tool, but I do get it. Like there's there's some inherent weaknesses there.
There's two things. One is, because this is the first I'm hearing of Twin Lane, but one wonders if part of this decision was also because they want to stop paying Dante licensing fees. I don't know how that factors into it.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. Companies like Yamaha and L-Acoustics and Avid, they've got so much money. They're at the top of the food chain. They don't care about that kind of stuff.
Okay. So
Yamaha wants control, but interestingly, they started with Ether Sound, which is a massive failure, and then they went to Dante instead of doing their own stuff. And they've been building network switches, the new switches, the SW2s. They've been building network switches for 20 years. Those guys have been doing that forever. So they know about networking, and yet they took somebody else's model, which is not very Yamaha. They usually do all of their own stuff. So I don't know that the money was ever an issue. I think they're just not satisfied with the quality or reliability. And I think another thing is people are getting too many questions and problems going, your console doesn't work. Well, no, it's a Dante problem. It's not like my problem. And Dante, maybe Audinate's not stepping up.
Well,
sorry, go ahead, Andy.
Oh, I was just going to say, I will say that I think my own experience, most of my Dante experience has been with Yamaha products. And the way they implemented their GUI of Dante on their consoles is confusing.
Screwy.
It is. Yeah. I mean, the fact that you have two screens that look almost identical and one lets you do input and output routing and the other one doesn't have those buttons. I mean, things like that. It took me some while to get my head around it. And I actually got certified in Dante level 1 and 2 certification, and I still sometimes have problems. And I'm like, come on, I shouldn't have these problems. But I digress a little bit. The thing is that I have to also wonder if part of this is that lots of their user base doesn't need to stick this signal onto a network, that it's just to get signals from A to B. And whether it's traveling along with other packets on a network at a corporation, and they're trying to get it from one building to another or whatever, maybe a lot of their majority of their users, maybe they don't need that, and maybe this is, I'm just speculating here, but maybe this is their way of going, okay, we were found that most of our users don't need this. The quality set, I mean, to me, what's the quality problem? What, does it doesn't sound bad?
Yeah, I don't think there's a huge quality problem, although that's a relative term. But there are some kind of inherent timing limitations to Dante that are kind of big.
Both L-Acoustics and Yamaha have said that the latency is too high in Dante. You can't do 400 channels sort of thing the way they're doing with Twin Lane. And L-Acoustics has had problems with, so they say, it's like third-party information, but they have said that their the timing is not accurate enough. It's not sample accurate enough for them.
Which is true. It's, I mean, when you set up a Dante network and you've got those latency settings that you're setting, I mean, I want to say what, like 500 microseconds or something is the
250 is as low as it goes.
50 is like as low as it goes, and I can totally see, if I'm, we talk about this all the time, but we're getting finer and finer and finer and finer control of things, and where 3 milliseconds might have seemed like who cares a few years ago, now it's like, no, this is like a huge deal, because I'm feeding digital signal from my processor, for instance, to all of my amplifiers in a cabinet that are all then being time aligned based on that delivery system, and the microsecond differences in the timing is going to alter the sound of my I'm throwing stuff out here, but those are the kinds of things that we're doing now. And if we don't have a protocol where we can, consistently, quickly sample, I mean, I get it. And then some of it's control. I know that the Dante implementation on the QLs and CLs has always felt tacked on to me. It's just, oh, this is what we're going to use for the interface. I tried to patch with the onboard controls like twice, and then threw my hands up and said, I'm never ever going to even try to learn this because it's stupid. And I just pushed the patch by Dante controller button, bring up my computer, and like if it's 3 patches, I still do it with Dante controller because the rest of it is it's just not intuitive, which is very un-Yamaha-esque. Like most of their things are, their intuitiveness is usually very good, and their head amp control, while going down the same pipe as the Dante primary, has nothing to do with the Dantes, which is extremely confusing for an end user because they're like, I plugged a Rio in and I plugged this pipe in from primary to primary and I get the Dante working, but for some reason I can't control the head amps. How could this be? And it's because they're completely unrelated to each other. They just happen to be on the same pipe, and all of that is kind of hidden from the user so that it's very non-intuitive. So
well, we're hitting on the reasons. Yamaha doesn't want this anymore. They don't want this confusion. If you look at how the PM series, the setup screens in the PM series are unbelievable to the level of showing you the intensity of the laser going down the fiber. The information that you see on these screens is incredible. So they've got to the point of everything talks to everything now, and there isn't this extra layer of Dante in the middle. And it all makes sense. Like it's just a way better system if they have control of it all, and they do now.
They haven't
And the Yamaha
completely.
philosophy. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, they haven't completely abandoned Dante yet, though. So
No.
I mean, all the
Oh, no.
PMs still.
It'll be there forever.
It's still there. But I mean, the twin lane came about because they needed a fiber network to be able to do the channel counts and the 96K. I mean,
That's not really the problem. You can do 96K and fiber with Dante very easily. I do fiber. That's all I ever do with Dante is fiber. So that's not really the problem. But the
right, you can, but then you're
control.
using fiber between your switches as
Yes.
opposed to right. It's a more robust fiber connection that they're using. It's the same thing with like Digico with their Opticore. It's a robust system, and it's dual redundant in each, so you can do ring topography. It's a different type of where in Dante they want you to do star, so it's a totally different network scheme.
The twin lane is all ring, and so is their console control. That's all ring as well. None of that can be put through a switch.
Right, exactly. I know, that's what I mean. Which is different from Dante, where Dante everything's going through a switch and it's star topology. But those rings are dual redundant. So you have redundancy in both directions if you lose a connection point. Same way the Digicos do it. But yeah, I mean Dante's not going anywhere. Obviously, there's so many products that have it. But I think a lot of it is the licensing. The reason that look at like the Behringer and the M32s, right? They're using AES50, and you can get a Dante card. If every Behringer or M32 that was ever sold had Dante licensing attached to it, with them being so much, the largest quantity digital console ever sold out there, that's a lot of money going to Audinate. So there's a lot less Dante cards floating around for an M or X32 as opposed to, putting it directly in Yamahas. So I think some of that is the money, but I think they just needed a new more robust network for the new PM series stuff. And like Digico before them did Opticore, and I just think everybody's going to come up with their own fiber option instead of the networked option at this point.
Well, and we're always talking about on this little show about it depends, and it's like this is another perfect example of it depends. Like, which one is the best protocol? Well, it depends. If I'm on a tour with the same 10 pieces of gear that are going to be configured the same exact way or very close to it for the entire tour, having an extremely flexible, I can patch anything to anything I want to, no matter what, topography is kind of like, I don't need that. What I need is I need it to work when the forklift runs over, the connector between the two things. And, and it just needs to be ridiculously bulletproof and just work. And if that means that I'm running a couple extra lines because of the way that like whatever. But then when we take one of the console solutions that don't have a Dante type situation and do it in like a lot of the one-off situations like I do, and some of my one-off situations are very large one-off situations, and we're dropping a bunch of gear and they've told us we absolutely positively are going to do these 3 things. These are the only 3 things we're going to do. We're definitely going to do these 3 things. And 30 seconds after you fire the gear up, they go, and this other thing. And that first thing, no, we're not doing that anymore. But there's going to be elephants over there, and we're going to need to do something with them. And, oh, there's one other like elephant trainer over there, and they'll need to be able to, and the changes pour in, and being able to say, I have every audio device that is on this show and some that aren't even on this show, all into one big thing, and I can just sit on my computer and go, okay, well then I guess now we're patching this to this. I guess we're now patching this to this. I mean, that flexibility is a show saver, is a lifesaver. So it's, it just depends on the application.
And Brian, and if you're using one of those formats that's common, you can pick up gear locally when you need extra stuff, which is probably why Lavo is not part of this conversation.
Right. I mean, well, and there's a little bit of a cost issue there as well. But your point is totally valid. I mean, Lavo is essentially a closed system, and not every VER doesn't carry a lot of Lavo gear in their warehouse. So yeah, it's like if it's not on the truck and we can't already do it, then we're stuck. Which is,
But the point being, it has to be commonly available
right
everywhere you go, at least in highly populated areas.
Which I do think is why, and I agree with Andrew. Now that we have a clarity, I agree with Andrew completely that Dante's obviously not going anywhere. It's obviously got a great foothold. It's obviously extremely useful for exactly what it's useful for. But I do understand, like on the high end in certain applications, there's just a lot to be said for. I'm the manufacturer. When something goes wrong with my gear, they call me. And I've got a third-party piece of gear in my gear that I don't have. That's just a recipe for a lot of bad conversations.
Well,
that would make me absolutely insane.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
That would make me absolutely insane that that a third or a half or whatever of the tech support calls were not actually my hardware, but that were this third-party interface thing that you have no idea who's running it, you have no idea who's setting it up, you have no idea how they're setting it up, you have no idea what standard it's been built to, you have no idea of the quality control and all that other stuff. I mean, yeah, I would run screaming from that situation. And yes, I have my Dante level 1 and level 2 certification, and I barely use the stuff. The last time I used it, I was at a ULXD system that I downloaded a free demo of a DAW system and used Dante controller to make myself a little soloing thing for the ULXD receivers because they don't have headphone outputs on them. But other than that, I don't use it. But that kind of this whole other side deal to make the stuff work, or that a lot of people were going to make the stuff work, would just make me crazy. I mean, if I was doing an RF gig and all my antenna connectors went into a bulkhead somewhere and something happened to them and then they came out later on,
hopefully came out the other side working.
Yeah. No.
If you call Riddle for tech support and you're not using one of the switches on their list, the call is over.
Yeah,
I love it.
No, and I mean, rightly so. I mean, your example, Ike, it would be like, you have a whole rack full of Shure receivers, but the audio card in there is made by Eddie's Attic. Like, you know, it's like all the RF is sure. Like it's all definitely sure. But if you don't have audio output, you're not, you know, and you call Sure and they go, well, is this an RF problem or is this an audio problem? And you go, it's an audio problem. They go, oh yeah, we don't make that. We don't make
Well, you know, I mentioned that in one of my training things is I was on a show one time and I got a call, you know, oh, you know, we need another frequency for, you know, RF6. And I go, what's going on? So I think I listened to it off air. I can't remember. It was an arena show and it was arena show in the round. So I was in the box on the one side of the arena and the monitor consoles and stuff were in the box on the other side of the arena. So I go tearing over there, stick my headphone into the front of the receiver, have a listen and go, frequency's fine. The audio coming out of the front of the receiver is fine. I don't think this is an RF problem. And sure enough, it was a bad cross point in an Avid switcher or an Avid head. And the reason I raise that point when I'm teaching is that a lot of times as the RF tech, because everything's a frequency problem until it isn't,
Right.
is the faster that you can get there and convince other people that you're right, the sooner the whole organization is going to get on to finding out what the actual problem is.
Yeah, and imagine what a nightmare it would be if Shure told you, oh yeah, no, we take care of RF all the way through the headphone jack. But all that balanced stuff at the back, like, no, we don't do that. That's somebody else's thing. You know, so you're like, is it for sure? You know, and that is kind of the world that we're in with Yamaha. It's like if there is, you know, if there's an output problem with a Rio and you call Yamaha, the poor customer service people are like, is it our gear or is it the other people's gear? Like, you know, they have to kind of sort through all that and, you know, don't even get started with the, you know, now it's 2 different firmware updates. Now it's, you know, 2 which are not necessarily in sync with each other because why would they be? And, you know, whose numbers don't match. And I can never remember which one's the latest one of this or that or whatever. And, you know, not to completely, you know, trash Dante and to the ground, because I will continue to use you, Audinate. I love you. No bad letters. But sorry, let me finish this real quick and then I'll come right to you, Andy. But my friend Pete actually pointed out to me the other day that no matter how redundant you run your system with a Yamaha system, the one single point of failure is the Audinate card inside your console. And it's like, oh, that's disconcerting because it was right. It's like you can have dual power supplies on your CL5. You can have primary, secondary. You can have multiple Rios if you want. You can have all this kind of redundancy. But if, you know, the card melts down, I mean, the chip, whatever, you know, it's the little thing, little Audinate piece, you're done. Like he actually runs, he'll run a Dante MY card in the Yamaha console as a backup for the internal card, just in case. I mean, he agrees, he admits, has it failed? No, but
could it fail? Yes.
No, yeah, the one way to guarantee that something will fail is to say there's no way this will ever fail. Andy, sorry, I kind of cut you off. What were you gonna say?
Actually, I'm going to piggyback off what you just said, and I'm going to piggyback off something that Ike said. But yeah, I mean, I found the thing with Dante is once you get it working and it's configured right and all of that, it just stays working. I've never had it just like fail for no reason whatsoever. The one time it did fail on me, it was my fault because I thought I had shut off all the triple E and I hadn't. There was like in the switch I was using, hey, word to the wise, warning, whatever. I had these Cisco 8-port switches, one of the ones they recommend. And you can go into the GUI of that and turn all the individual, there's a master on off for it. You still have to turn off the physical ports. It's weird. I don't know why they did it that way. And I didn't catch that. Anyway, And then, so I just don't, Dante to me, it just, once you get it working, it stays working. And that's good. Good news. um, Ike, this goes to one of your points too, and it's around troubleshooting on the job, on site, when you have a very complex and long chain from the microphone head to the speakers. Okay, let's just say that. And if I'm A2, and I've been in A2 where they have been using Shure, not Axient, unfortunately, where you can use the headphone jack on those things to monitor your.
ULXD. Yeah.
Yeah, ULXD and QLXD, they don't have that. So the ULXD, they sent me a whole bunch of ULXD, and I knew this ahead of time, so it was my turn. And I put this in the Discord, by the way. So we did this trick, and me and a couple of buddies of mine figured this out, which is you use a Reaper, a Stream Deck, and Dante, and you can tell, basically you can push a button on your Stream Deck, it will solo a Reaper channel, and then I can hear it on headphones on a Focusrite, what is this, an AM2, it's just a headphone box with Dante in it. But the point is that if there is a problem with a microphone channel, a wireless microphone channel, I can look at the receiver and see signal. I can see both the RF and I can see audio. That doesn't mean it's working, because maybe something's happened to Dante or whatever. I'm listening to Dante. The Dante stream is good. Okay, good. I can then tell my A1, it's good till here.
Right.
And having that level of confidence with Dante is really important. And Shure took some of that away from us when they went to these digital systems, because all the old analog systems, I think most of them had headphone jacks, at least the ones we used, the UHFRs and things like that. So would that have saved you from running all the way over to the other side of the stage?
No, I mean, this particular system was UHFR, so it was analog with a headphone jack and everything. And it was just when they were listening to it. So, I'm over on the other side monitoring frequencies mostly, and you're doing a line check, and the two monitor engineers are there, and they're going, and the two front of house engineers for that matter, and they're going, oh, well, that one sounds weird. And so the first thing that people say when
it's Ike's fault.
Well, when it's an RF mic, the first thing they say is frequency problem. Oh yeah, what's it sound like? Oh, it sounds gated. And I'm thinking, I'm having a hard time thinking what kind of problem with RF would make something sound gated, but yep, okay, I'm here for you. So I ran across and plugged in the headphone amp and had to listen again. And I go, well, the audio's clean.
Right.
At least, I can't attest to what's coming out the XLR because the headphone output's a tap off, but it's definitely not a frequency problem because you can.
I have a
listen
similar
to
scenario.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt. Please continue.
Go ahead.
Well, so on the Tonight Show, most of NBC Universal on our Tonight Show remotes is usually a Lavo infrastructure. And then over time, we transitioned over to Axient Digital from the older Sennheiser stuff. And they're usually pretty big rigs, I got a lot of channels. And I agonized over, so most of the time from the start, what I would have the studio infrastructure do, which meaning our remote, we would generally reproduce the 30 Rock infrastructure wherever we were. So if we were in a theater across the country, we'd bring out a lava rig with a bunch of Dallas racks and basically reproduce what they do in New York. I'd have them provide a MADI output card from the Lavo system. And I would monitor RF from my racks locally and through a MADI Moni. And then after we transitioned to Axient Digital, of course, I would do the MADI monitoring locally between Axient Digitals in the rack. And the advantage of having both is with the Dante locally, I can tell that RF is working and that audio is being received and being DAC'd back into audio. That doesn't tell me what's happening from the analog XLR outputs into the Lavo system, which is what the broadcast, the monitor consoles, the front of house console are all getting their outputs off of. By going to the MADI, then, if somebody says, hey, we're hearing gating on an RF channel, and I'm listening all along locally on the Dante connection from the top Axiom digital receiver, and I don't hear anything funny, I go to the MADI. If it still sounds clean, then I know that it's not only coming through the receiver, through the XLR analog outputs, getting into Lavo correctly, and then being distributed back to a MADI card, back to me. That opens up a whole nother, layer of knowing that the signal is good to this point. And it gives me the ability to troubleshoot better, because by listening between those 2 points, if I hear a difference, I know where to look for a problem.
Yep.
Yeah,
Nathan,
sure.
Nathan's, I'm only cutting everybody else off because Nathan always has something smart to say, but if I don't call his name, like he never gets a word in edgewise. Nathan, please help us. Help us, Obi-Wan. You're our only hope.
I think everyone has issues with Dante because of its layer 3 capabilities. I think anything that is going to be layer 2, you're going to have a lot less issues. You're also going to have less latency. I've never understood going into Dante with your digital wireless systems. Like I kind of understand at the same time you're extending latency into the band members' ears that is getting kind of high, and people can be sensitive to that. I think keeping that low makes sense. Those are my general things about this whole conversation. There's redundancy for everything, and there's failures for everything. I don't know them, but I know I've heard of a couple high-end console digital systems. But even if you go to analog, dual power supplies, okay, who cares if your master bus summing transistors blow up? That's not going to help you. You're going to have to reroute. So, everything's MTF is going to fail at some point. Hopefully you have a second console.
Yeah, well, I actually one of the, and it's a whole different conversation, like how do you keep things from failing no matter what? And it's a really tougher nut to crack when you start really digging.
Well, when you talk about servers, it's all about number of running hours per year that you want. Do you want 99 or 0.99%, which is 6 hours, 0.999, which is 6 minutes, or 0.9999, which is 6 seconds? If you keep going, you keep spending double the money every single time. EBFS, percent money sign DB.
Right, but you never quite get to zero. Like you never quite get to. There is no, it goes to infinity. I've got 2 QL5s here. One because I can, and 2 because I can at least I can offer the option, because I'm trying to sell people on mixing audio remotely. I can offer the option of a completely redundant path all the way from them through completely different pipes on the internet, all the way into my house, through completely different everythings, through completely different consoles, all the way back to completely different stuff. And it's maybe makes people feel a little bit better.
Though, that makes you the single point of failure, my friend.
This is the problem, is that as soon as I get involved, there's a giant spoff in the middle of everything, and it's me. Trust me.
I always was surprised, at what they think is necessary to be redundant. Redundant power supplies were a big deal in analog consoles because there's a lot of current draw. An analog, a redundant power supply nowadays, forget it. You don't need any of that stuff. There's so many things that they do redundantly.
The software is going to fail way before your power supply.
Of course, a cable of some sort, redundant cabling, they do that now, but there's so many things that people do redundantly that I don't know that that's really where it's going to fail. It's going to be something else.
I have a great story of that kind of thing not quite working. There's a company here in Canada called Telesat, and what they do is they uplink stuff to to satellites, and they have a bunker here in the Toronto Docklands that is there, and it's supposed to be maintain communication and so on and so forth. And we had a big power failure here one time, and immediately the backup diesel generators cut in, and everything switched over, and it was great for 20 minutes, and then it all shut down. And the reason is that when whatever electricians wired up this arrangement, they wired the louvers on the bunker that the diesel generators were in, were on the main power instead of the backup power. And so they did not open. And so the generators ran out of oxygen 20 minutes later, and that was that. So those are the kinds of pitfalls that are out there with these kind of redundant systems, is you really have to look at them really carefully and not have that one little detail that you miss, because it'll bite you in the ass every time.
UPS.
So many times people don't bother to even test any of this stuff, to go, let's do our sound check on the redundant line and just make sure it's actually working. And you find out, oh, that was never patched properly,
Yeah. I also learned a long time it's one of those like stories etched in your brain. But I distinctly remember the first time that my primary lectern mic failed and I had to switch over to the backup that I already knew was kind of dirty. I already knew was kind of but I was like, it's just the backup, so whatever, it'll be fine. And then I had to white knuckle the rest of the night because my kind of crappy lectern mic that I knew was kind of crappy had no backup, because it was the backup. And it was one of those, like, if one is gonna be more robust than the other, make it the backup. Because if you go to the backup, there's nothing after that, unless yeah, it's kind of a different topic, and we could probably spend a lot of time on that. I'll do one quick little like wrap up thing, and then we'll get off the air, and then we'll talk about all kinds of other stuff that we don't share in public. We have secrets. There are so many secrets. But the second, anyway, a relatively recent RF thing that I did, Jason, and it's kind of tying off of all of these monitor stories and off of interfaces. On the gig, the monitor console was a Digico. The front of house console was an S6L, an Avid. But the front of house rig was running through QL1 over digital, I forget exactly how, but it was basically the like submixer / backup music, consoles, so the music console was the S6L, and then the QL1 was a sidecar little thing, and then it was Dante to another distribution point. I think that was what went to the amplifiers. But anyway, we had all the things, and then my RF was going analog to the main splitter tent, and then being split to a bunch of different things through a bunch of, and then I was being provided if I'm recalling correctly, a MADI to Dante interface to go Dante back to my tent so that I could monitor on a CL5 the RF after all of the patch points, after the MADI, and they happened to have a CL5 floating around, and it was easier to give me that because I could then patch different, and I could monitor it locally because I could patch it locally, and then that's when I started thinking, there's got to be and it was just a giant wall of analog patching, because it just ended up being a giant, splitter mess. I mean, it worked, we had somebody who took care of all that and it worked, but you just kind of go, please, surely there's got to be like some sort of better way, but
we still do a ton of TV like that because so many these productions involve multiple guest artists and guest entities, and they're all using different console packages and digital standards. You got some on MADI, some on Opticore, some on RockNet, and the final solution that Broadcast always says is just screw it. Let's do all analog on our end.
Right. Just split it. Nathan, were you going to say something, Nathan?
I was going to say, while we're on this redundancy topic, that you were describing a scenario, it's like the biggest failure point is going to be human. Patching, routing, whatever. You're going to do it wrong. I can just imagine if you're running a big Dante patch, it's like, okay, well, we're going to change over from this console to this console, now it's going to be repatched. And yeah, you could save your scenes and hit recall, but what if you miss just one and it goes to the right amplifier stack? Like, okay, you know, we just lost that. That's great. We can repatch it real fast. That's the nice thing about Dante, but
yeah, no, I mean,
it's easier to see a big multi-pin and go, that multi goes to this thing. It's really easy to see that.
You know, and then some of this, you know, there's a whole nother subset of this conversation that we didn't even have, which is how much of this is ultimately just gives you warm fuzzies. I have a whole rant about primary and secondary networks with Dante and how they basically exist to give everybody a warm fuzzy. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic. I try to keep us under 45. We're already well, I guess we started a little late. Anyway, we're rabbit trailing.
We all vote on our favorite protocol. I'm going to go with Alan Gigace.
Gigace.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
Another layer too.
Microseconds.
All right. Good, nice.
Pretty good.
Well played. Well, I don't even know if I could touch that. That's
okay.
Like
I'm voting for semaphore.
RockNet.
Flags.
Smoke signals.
RockNet. Holy cow, that takes me back. RockNet.
Yeah. See now this is why. So now you know why when there's topics that we're talking about that I don't take them out of the list once we've talked about them once, because we just scratched the surface of now let's talk about all the ones that failed and why, and what was good and bad, and what we wish we had back, and on and on and on. But anyway, thank you guys for joining us on the YouTubes. We're going to do a thing and play us home.
Bye-bye, boys.
Have fun storming the castle.
Think it'll work?
It'll take a miracle.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.